Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Voices of CMS podcast. I'm your host, Adi, and with me today is another remarkable guest, Professor Sotirios Damouras, or popularly known as Professor Sotos. Professor Sotos has been a dedicated lecturer and professor at the University of Toronto since 2011. His journey in academia is marked by an impressive array of teaching appointments and a postdoctoral fellowship at the Bloorview Research Institute. With a robust educational background, Professor Sotos holds a B.Sc from the University of Athens, an M.Sc from the University of Warwick, and a Ph.D. from the Carnegie Mellon University. Join us as we explore the remarkable career of Professor Sotos, delving into his teaching philosophies and the insights he has gained through his journey in the world of statistics and mathematical finance. Stay tuned as we have this inspiring conversation with one of the UTSC's finest. Welcome, Professor Sotos.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Adi. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you here. It has been a while since we are doing this. We did this with Professor Brian Harrington. Guys, if you haven't checked out the episode, please do that. But it is a pleasure to have you here. We have heard a lot about you. You've been at UTSC for a while. It's when we say UTSC statistics, people just think of you as one of the people who taught them at least one course during their degree. So that is why we would like to learn a lot more about you, dive into your early life, your inspirations, your career, your journey in academia and teaching. So let's begin at the early life. How would you describe it was growing up in Athens? And what were your inspirations back then?
Yeah, so I grew up in Athens, like you said. As a child, I was not very academically inclined. I would say I wasn't like the best student in my class or anything like that. But I do remember I had I was good at math or mathematical thinking. I liked abstract thinking. So and that was I think my favorite subject was math and physics. Those were at least the subjects that I could do. When I put in the effort, I did very well. I didn't have specific aspirations of going into university. Actually, both my parents hadn't been to university. They were they just graduated from high school. I grew up in a kind of like working middle class neighborhood, so it wasn't academia. I mean, it was a good prospect, but it wasn't something that I would say I was planning since early on in my life. But yeah, I liked math. I liked mathematics and abstract thinking, and I also liked I liked engineering. I had an uncle which I was very close to, and he was an engineer. He was working at the Greek railroad, and he was very crafty, and he liked to spend time with us and my cousins, and he would build things for us, and he was an inspiration for me. I think I would if I was not into statistics or math, I would have probably gone into engineering. I think I like making things. But I had I would say like average, regular, happy childhood.
Interesting. So I'm assuming this uncle had a lot of influence. Were there like any summer projects that you did with him?
Yes, we were many different things now. I remember like he would make bows and arrows. We would make them like from scratch. We would go to the river and collect wood and once we built a little hut, and he taught us like how to lay tiles so that the water doesn't seep in, doesn't creep in, and how to do it like properly. Different things. If anything broke, we would give it to him and he would fix it. It's that type of person. He was very nice, and he also enjoyed it. That's the other important thing, is that whatever he was doing, he really, it was contagious. Like he had an enthusiasm, and it was contagious. That's how he got you involved, I think.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Definitely, definitely. Enthusiasm is contagious, and I think we all feel it when many professors that teach here are enthusiastic about their subject, and that inspires us to take interest in it, do research, explore it beyond the classroom. So yeah, definitely, I think that imprinted on you, and you're here today. So very thankful for that. Could you tell me about your academic journey? How did it begin? How was high school like? How was university like?
So yeah, like I said, I wasn't the best student in class or anything like that. I was a good student. My parents wanted me to do well. In Greece, also people were very focused in education. Parents are very focused in education. We had tutoring like, like 20, 30 years ago, before it became. I see now, actually, in a sense, we're kind of ahead of the curve. I see now tutoring is becoming so more prevalent. And when I say tutoring, I mean tutoring even in high school or in middle school even sometimes. So the important thing, so in Greece, in order to talk about my academic journey, I have to describe a little bit how academia works in Greece. It's quite different than North America. So if you want to get into university, there were only public universities. You wouldn't pay for university if you went to university in Greece, but in order to get in, there is this national entrance exam, which is a very gruesome examination. Like it's the most difficult exam I've probably taken in my whole life. So you prepare for it for 1 or 2 years. When I took the exam, it was only 4 subjects: math, physics, composition, like Greek or language, if you like, and chemistry.
Okay.
So those were my subjects because I was more focused towards like STEM programs. And and you have to do well in these exams. So and if you pass these exams, you go to university. So that's a big milestone. So the last year of high school, I studied a lot, like probably the most I've studied in my whole life, just preparing for these exams. And and I did actually pretty well in these exams, and I got into my first choice for a degree. I had I remember actually you have to fill in a preference list, and then according to your performance on these exams, you get admitted. And my preference was I had math schools, but I put statistics first because I thought it's more applied. It was almost like an applied math program. I also had physics programs, but they were ranked lower. Were not my first choice. I liked physics. I think actually maybe I liked physics even more than math. But I thought it was more difficult to do something with physics or theoretical physics. The problem in Greece, so another thing is that in Greece, education is very theoretical because Greece doesn't have a lot of industry or business. Like you don't have a lot of opportunities for co-programs like you would have if you have here, if you go to a North American university. So it's kind of more theoretical, like it's more abstract. I thought I wanted to do something more applied. That's why I chose statistics.
Makes sense. I know. I think the national exam story I relate to a lot. Like I come from India, and still, even to this day, we have the exact same system. We have a national exam, especially if you want to get into engineering, and for that exam, there's physics, chemistry, and math. Those are the only 3 subjects. There's no language, there's no composition. But the questions that appear in that examination are so much more difficult than they need to be. I have not seen those level of questions in university here. And I have looked at those math questions, physics questions from first and second year courses. And like the rigor of, I think, thinking qualitatively or even rationally that comes from solving those kind of questions. It just doesn't come when you just learn about different concepts. So I think even though I did not give the exam at the end because I came to UTSC, just the process was so much, it was enriching in some way. Like it gave me a perspective and the way to think about problems.
Yeah, I don't know where I stand on these exams. They are very gruesome. Like, I mean, yeah, if you survive these exams, you're good. But yeah, the level was very high. I mean, I remember even in Greece we had, so for math, for example, we had linear algebra. It was calculus, linear algebra, imaginary numbers.
Yeah.
It was in a bit of probability. So it was very broad. It's almost like first year university.
Right. Right.
It was quite advanced.
Makes sense.
I know everyone who has been through a system like that, they will remember that it's very characteristic, of these countries. It's almost like an institution, pretty much. Like
100%.
You have to,
100%. Okay, so moving on to your undergraduate degree, I think after giving your exam, you started university in Greece. You said your first choice was the one you got into.
Yeah, statistics.
How was that experience? Now, what exactly were you studying? What was your cohort like? What were the teachers like?
So the programs, again, just to give some context, in Greece, the university, you don't apply to university, you apply to a program. So you give the national exams and then you go into, you're going to study statistics. And it's the program of study is pretty prescribed. Like, we don't have the flexibility. We don't have like a double major. You cannot do biology and philosophy. That doesn't exist. Unfortunately, I think it's another good aspect of the North American university system. But so it was pretty prescribed. You had to study statistics, and you were taking those courses for the program. It's almost like doing a specialist, pretty much.
Got it.
So my first year at university, I didn't do very well because of the burnout from the gruesome national exam. Because really, I spent the last year in high school was just studying almost full time. And that's very typical. Like, once you get in, because of course you don't have tuition, you don't have to pay tuition. So it's typical for people to relax, take it a little easy. Okay. So I didn't do that well in my first semester. I think I failed all courses except for English. Mostly for lack of trying. But it was, so my situation, again, it was a bit weird because I was actually, my university was in Athens, so I didn't have to move out of my house, and I was still staying with my parents, and I had my old friends from high school. Actually, my university was closer. I could walk to my university. My high school was farther than my university, which was weird. Many students have the different experience because they move away from their house. I felt like it was more like in the neighborhood. But anyways, I didn't do that by choice. It just happens that this university is in the center of Athens. I didn't attend class that often the first semester. Like, I was hanging out with my old friend from high school. I was basically catching up for my last year of high school, kind of. Which, in retrospect, it wasn't a good strategy. I think it's important to socialize in the first year. I just did that, but I did that later on in the second year. Third year, I caught up with my cohort. Now, my cohort, actually, the university was quite special because that was the first year that they admitted students in the statistics department from the STEM exams, like the math, physics, and so. And because it was competitive, we had a cohort of students who were all, I would say, very strong and very theoretical. in the past, you could get into statistics also by giving exams more on economics-based exams, like easier math and more and different types of topics, like no physics, no. So, but my year we had all these students who were more, I would say, more mathematically trained or with better mathematical training. And that showed, because I think out of my cohort we had, I don't know, almost 10 of the students did PhDs in the end. I think we're like maybe 40 students who graduated, 40, 50.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it was
One in four.
it was a very well, not all, maybe it was 8, but something, yeah, it was very high.
Yeah.
I have a very good friend from that year who's also in North America, and he did a PhD, and other friends I know in the UK and in Europe. It was, I think it was an exceptional cohort. So yeah, my first year experience, like I said, I was a bit absent, so I cannot, I don't remember a lot from the first semester because I was not attending class. But then I caught on. I rebounded, and then I took it more seriously after I had recovered from the national exams.
Yeah, makes sense. So this means, I think, a lot of your influence to do a PhD, pursue theoretical statistics, either came from your early high school inclinations or somewhat from your peers who were...
It was my peers. It was the friends I had in university, especially in third and fourth year, where you start thinking about what you're going to do next. I mean, the first 2 years is not, you're not, I don't think you're thinking, well, I didn't have these discussions, what we're going to do if we're going to do postgraduate studies or anything like that. But in third and fourth year, and because we had this group of students who were all very good and very active and ambitious, I think that kind of helps. It was very fortunate to have other people that think like you or that have aspirations, because it's somehow they help each other, right? It feeds off on each other. So that was very lucky. I think mainly it was my peers, and also the fact that I wanted to go abroad. I want to leave Greece. I want to see other things, and education was one way, very typical way for achieving that. I think in other, and again, I think that's something that Greece, a lot of Greeks go into academia, just because our system is more theoretical, and it's also a way out, a ticket to go abroad and study abroad, and
that makes a lot of sense. I always, my first introduction to Greece, or even like the idea of this place, was through history, and then a bunch of Percy Jackson novels, and then mythology somewhere. And then, of course, I think I took a course here at UTSC in the first or the second year. It was called Introduction to Capitalism. It was a very, very interesting course. Like, it shaped my perspective on like how the world of capitalism works, or the society around us functions. And there's this one book in which, in that course, that was recommended to us. It was written by Yanis Varoufakis, and he was from Greece, and his principles, and it's called Talking to My Daughter About the Economy.
Yeah.
And I was like, Dan, if someone explained this stuff to me in this manner earlier, it would have been so much more impactful. Like, I can see the inclination towards finance and how all of these logics just boil down to the basic fundamental aspects that are taught to people in Greece, and how that could lead to more theoretical thinking and thought. Yeah, makes sense. So you said then you moved out of Greece. How was that like?
I did a master's in financial mathematics at the University of Warwick in the UK first. So my last year at university, I was applying at different master's programs, and in Europe primarily, and I got accepted to this program. back then, just for a bit of context, financial mathematics was very hot. It was, there were a few areas related to statistics that were considered good for like career prospect. Traditionally, it was actuarial science, but around the early 2000s was financial mathematics was very hot. So it was a very hot topic, and it coincided with a boom in financial derivatives and deregulation of financial markets. So especially in the US, North America, they started trading more openly and more freely on more complicated derivative products, which, of course, they involve risks as well. We know what happened in 2008, right? But it was a time when it was a very hot area in that part of kind of like relate to probability theory, statistics, mathematics. So I applied for that program with the hopes. Actually, I was thinking I didn't intend to go into academia. Okay. I didn't have aspirations to be a professor or to do research. Mm-hmm. I thought I would go into work in industry, actually. Yeah. So I did this program. I liked it a lot. I liked the subject. I still teach it and I enjoy it. I think there is intellectually the intellectual content is very interesting for understanding how it works. I didn't manage to practice it, unfortunately, but that was kind of a coincidence. So what happened is I finished my master's in 2003. Okay. That was the dot-com bubble time, and they were not hiring in finance. I anyways had applied. Actually, I had the idea of doing a Ph.D. as a backup, so I had already applied for a Ph.D. So I didn't spend too much time looking for a job after my master's. I thought I would continue. And then I got into a PhD in statistics after I finished my master's.
Yeah, that seems very interesting. I think we are complaining these days that we are not getting jobs.
That was always the same complaint.
Inflection point because of Gen AI or COVID or whatever. The tech companies are not doing well for some reason. But I think you faced a much bigger crisis back then, where hiring was not a scene. How did you manage this inflection point? I like you said you had a backup academia plan, but you were outside of home and you were in this country with no job lined up. How did that work out?
It didn't stress me that much because I had the alternative of the PhD, and I anyways wanted. I don't know. Maybe I like universities as a space. I think, and I think everyone should like them. I think they're amazing places, right? The free flow of ideas, and it's you have interesting people, young people. You're learning so many things. So I like being in a university. I think I enjoy that. So, but I didn't get stressed because I didn't have obligations. I was still young and. The future was still open, and I liked actually the university. I liked the prospect of doing a PhD.
Right.
And going and moving. Also, I got accepted in the States at Carnegie Mellon University, so that was also exciting. I would get to see a different place.
Yeah.
It wasn't so stressful. It was more stressful when I graduated from my PhD and then again, I tried to find I was interviewing actually for industry, but then that was 2008, and that was even worse. And then nobody was hiring. Like I had interviews that they were still interviewing just to see who's out in the market, and but they said we don't have the funding now. So it's kind of strange, or I feel like I went back into academia kind of by not by accident, but not 100% by choice.
I'll
I'll say that I'll tell that story maybe after.
Yeah, no, I think somewhere it was. I don't believe in fate, but this sounds like fate. Like the two big inflection points you had in your life where you determined what career you would pursue were the times when people were not hiring. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think you were meant to be here to teach us. So
I,
that's,
I think
yeah.
so too. It was karma
Yeah.
or
So yeah,
destiny.
but from Athens, Greece, where your parents, you were a first generation college student, from there to Carnegie Mellon University, I think it's a big jump and it's a lot of effort. Of course, it's a lot of planning, I'm sure. But how does that feel? Do you think that was something you had aimed towards always?
So okay, yeah. So I did not really. I didn't always have the plan of doing a PhD or going into academia. It somehow happened, but the time when I made the decision to go into academia, this is what I wanted. So I was happy. I mean, it sounds like it was a coincidence, but it wasn't only a coincidence. I really like the prospect of doing a PhD and going and delving like deep into a subject. I also like kind of abstract thinking and more theoretical thinking, and that I enjoyed.
Okay, okay. And how is CMU like? Did you like the place? How is
It was so CMU is in Pittsburgh, which is a small. I mean, back then when I joined CMU, it was pretty much like what Detroit is now. I think it was post-industrial, which had actually, but it was a big city. It used to be a very wealthy city because it was the center of the steel industry.
Right.
So it had very good infrastructure. That was good for grad life because rents were very cheap. Like you could find an apartment for $300.
Okay.
You could rent a bachelor's, and so it was very affordable, which is good if you are on a stipend.
Yeah.
It had a very good infrastructure, so it had like an opera, and it had good endowments from people who made money in the steel industry. So it had an kind of a cultural life as well. So it wasn't just typical Rust Belt city, and the university was amazing. The university was. The intellectual experience was amazing. I took courses from people that I admire. They were really super bright. You get to interact with very smart people. Get to experience like what it feels to do like cutting edge research, and that was amazing. It was a very nice experience.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also hard. So a PhD is a very. I don't think it's for everyone. Like it's a very how do you say focused experience. Like you have to work on the same thing like for years, for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Which for some people might might not be their cup of tea. But if you enjoy that type of thing, I think it's it's amazing. I really enjoyed it. And also I took a lot of courses. Actually, I took more courses than I should have probably. But I had different interests. So when I say I took more courses, I took the courses for my stats program that I had to take for the qualifying exams, but I also took courses in stochastic analysis from the math department, and I took some courses in machine learning from the computer science department, just out of interest and in these areas, and I really enjoyed them.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, actually. I think back then, even machine learning was just beginning.
It was the beginning of machine. It was machine learning was even then. It was still like there was a lot of activity. It was not. So what had happened is we didn't have the neural networks had not exploded back then. When I was doing machine learning, the hottest thing was support vector machines. So because of there are some optimality results that under certain conditions, that's the best classifiers you could have. So people had, some people had invested, many people thought that was the way forward. And then the explosion happened in neural networks, which was basically driven by U of T. Primarily, and another Canadian institute. There was a big Canadian influence actually in that, and it revolutionized the field.
Right.
So I got to witness the beginning at Carnegie Mellon, and then while I was teaching at U of T, it was the developments, the pace was insane. It was so fast. And here we are now, and we don't know. I don't know where we'll be in 5 years.
Right.
It's so difficult to predict.
I think it's even difficult to predict where we'll be in 1 year.
Yeah,
It's insane what the capabilities of things are. And the more important thing is people, like if you take education at U of T or you do some kind of CS degree, which like you delve into the nitty-gritties of things, AI is at the end of the day math. And a lot of people don't see it like that. The impact that it has in terms of utility of AI is very visible. But the impact it is having translationally into people, like people getting feared that they'll lose their jobs because of it, it's not projection. You cannot project it. It's intangible in a lot of ways. So
yeah, I think there are two things. I mean, I don't know what the social impact will be. We can look at the technological developments, and people who are in the field, they can understand it maybe better. But another saying, I don't remember whose it is, but there's this saying that every advanced technology at some point to the layman, it looks like magic. It looks like completely. So yeah, it's if you're not, it is math. I think if you go and study, it's basically a lot of linear algebra, a lot of optimization, a lot of and the scale, and just scaling it, solving huge problems with computers. But to the everyday person, it's completely insane. Being able to talk to your phone and having discussions, it's basically. That's the Turing test for it's done basically.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. The way ChatGPT reacts to your conversations, it's insane how it can give you expressions, it can give you ums and ahs and think about things, and the way it appears to people is as if there's an actual person sitting there and talking to them. It's not the case, but it is processed in a way that it is. So
yeah.
It's revolutionary in some ways. Okay, coming back to your PhD journey, or even let's talk about your entire academic journey till now. Were there any points where you faced failures or challenges or anything?
Oh yeah, all along the way.
Okay.
Failure is definitely part of the game, and I mean, like I mentioned, I failed courses. I understand. I think the way we have set up the system here, it puts a lot of pressure for failing a course. Like I have failed courses and I didn't feel bad about to the extent that students feel now. That, it's going to ruin my GPA or. But I think I understand why that happens. We put a lot of stakes on grades, like your scholarship or the tuition or your GPA or whether you will get admitted to a master's. It weighs so heavy on grades, which anyways at some point I think we might have to rethink how we use them. But I've had failures, like I failed courses. I didn't go to my first choice for my PhD. I had applied to other universities as well.
Okay.
And even for my master's. So, when you do research, a lot of things don't work. Most of the things don't work. Like maybe 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 100 ideas will work. And that's where it's important to have a good advisor who can maybe figure out whether an idea will work, like before having to try it out or investing the time, or give you good direction, because you'll have to face failure, and you'll have to process it and continue.
Over the years, have you thought of a strategy to deal with failures in general?
I mean, it's always unsettling when something fails. So well, as I get older and more mature, I feel like okay, failure will happen and you need some time to recover from failure, and I don't have to feel bad about that, right? You know that after it has happened a few times, you know that you will bounce back. Okay, and once you have that faith, you know that it's a process, and then it doesn't feel like the end of the world.
Right.
I think that's the main thing, to know that there's always another chance and another thing you can try and another idea and another alternative.
Yeah. No, I think I think given the population that we see at U of T, we are students who have been excelling since most of their school life. And when we come here, we see all these other students who have been excelling as well. And the instructors or the faculty or the staff treat those students like the excellent students they are, and that is why the courses are hard. Uh, the concept of curving is new. When you get 40 out of 100 in a statistics test, which is very common for some reason, it feels really bad. And I think I had that first experience in university in first or second year. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I tried everything. I studied. I put in the effort. I even went to the office hours, talked to the professors. But maybe it just feels so narrow at that point. Such a small thing that I'm judging my entire self on. And I think losing that micro focus and widening your perspective, something that we have to train on.
For sure. For sure. And also, I mean, I had the exact same experience, and I think most professors had this exact same experience. Like, you know, when I was at school, I was a good student. Like, I knew I could do well. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe I was not always the best one in my year, but that's because I didn't want to put the effort for some subjects, which is different. You can accept that. Yeah. Once you go into university, you're immediately in a much different crowd. It's not like your neighborhood school anymore. But I could still, I mean, even in university, I knew I could do well. But then my master's degree, you know, you're now surrounded with people that are all very good. And in the Ph.D., you know, these are all exceptional people, and you're not the best one anymore. And you have to accept that. And but it's fine. You don't have to be the best at everything. And actually, even that idea, I think it's very distorted in a way, because once you start specialize, the goal is to be very good, to be an expert on a topic. You cannot cover everything. You cannot be across the board the best in everything. And I think that's a very tall order, that people think that they should, you know, they will have like the same relative standing when they go to university as they did when they were in their elementary school. But that's, it's not how it works, and it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I think in some ways it's all about awareness. Like in university, when I first came in, even though I knew like everyone's going to be excellent and everyone knows a lot more about things than me, it was me lacking awareness of the fact that, hey, it is okay to not be the best in some ways. So I think that philosophy helps in some situations. In others, let's talk about your PhD life. In that, I think you said you came across a lot of different ideas that failed after you invested time and effort into. How did you make up for that?
So for my PhD, I also had another setback. So I started my PhD. We were assigned a tentative advisor or supervisor, but mine left after the first year. So during my second year in the PhD, I was kind of like an orphan. Okay. I was in the program, but I didn't have. I wasn't working with someone, so that was scary. That was unsettling. But so it's once I remember I was very stressed about what my thesis was gonna be. But then I was trying different ideas. I was reading over the literature. Then my advisor actually gave me an idea that I pursued, which it worked out.
Okay.
One way of going about analyzing time series, which had it performed well in certain conditions, and it was you could fit these models in a convenient way, in a practical way. So that was the topic of my my PhD. It is a long process. You have to have faith and and have good guidance, and it's very important to have a good supervisor that keeps you on track and gives you perspective, like you said, that it's not the end of the world. If something doesn't work today, you have to think about alternatives, you have to try different things, and in the end it will, I don't know if you will solve, but that's the way you should go about it, right? I don't know if it's always you'll get exactly what you were thinking you would get out of it, but I think that's the mentality that you should have.
It makes sense. Could you talk about your career after? What happened when you graduated PhD?
So when I graduated, I came to Toronto because my wife we met at grad school, and she had graduated a year earlier, and she got a position at U of T. So I joined, but I didn't want to work at the university. So initially I was interviewing. I graduated in August 2008. I was in Toronto September 2008 looking for jobs. It was right after, the financial crisis. So it was a weird time. I interviewed at banks, hedge funds. They were not hiring. So I think it was October, November, I was kind of starting to despair. And I found an opportunity to do a postdoc at the Bloorview, Holland Bloorview, now it's called hospital. It's a kids rehabilitation hospital. I thought I had to do something. So instead of being idle, I think I might as well take that opportunity, which was actually very nice. It was a very nice lab, and we had a great director, I did some research there, published a few papers. It was actually quite productive. I think I stayed for 4 months, or 6 months. If I remember correctly, and we published some papers, we did some work and some statistical consulting within the lab, like working on other people's projects. I was kind of the designated statistician. It was mostly people from an engineering background there. And in parallel, I also found a teaching gig at the University of Toronto on the side. Like I was teaching for the School of Continuing Studies, a statistics course. And that's how I got kind of into teaching. After the postdoc, I applied for like a contract work for teaching courses. Then I got a 1-year contract at Mississauga, and then a permanent position open at Scarborough, where they also had a finance program, which I liked. So then I got like a permanent position teaching. So that was kind of the trajectory.
Interesting. So before getting into a permanent position, you sort of had an opportunity to test the waters. And when I think we talked to Brian last, he said most of the professors here, they have the ability to earn so much more, but they choose to come teach at this university because they're passionate about their students. Was this passion that drew you towards teaching and the permanent position? Or was it just the job market?
It wasn't the job market. It's the environment. I liked being at the university. It's not about money. I mean, I agree with what Brian said, that if your objective function is money, you wouldn't be teaching at the university. That's correct. But that's because there are many other things that are very rewarding for the people who do this job. Interacting with young, bright people is amazing. Really, the environment is great. The intellectual environment of a university, it's unlike any other place. The freedom you have. I think a lot of people who are in the university value freedom. Academic freedom, intellectual freedom. If you are working for a company, you can get paid more, but you don't get to choose what you do, or you might not have a say. You don't you don't get to interact with the people you want or you appreciate. It's a very different environment. So I agree with that. So the reasons I stayed in academia, or I came back into academia, is because I actually enjoyed teaching. I liked it. I enjoyed the university. I enjoy working with students, and seeing their trajectory and being part of that is very rewarding. Their trajectory in life and helping them fulfill their aspirations. I think that's or contributing. I think it's mostly up to them, but contributing, if you can, it's really rewarding. So I think these are the main reasons why people are into academia and teaching, specifically teaching. I mean, there is also other positions, but like if you do research, but for teaching, for sure, I agree.
I think this is a good segue into the teaching aspect of your career. So, as I said before, and this is not a take on the statistics department, it's just the courses are infamous for very rough questions, very rough grades. Students see a lot of difficulties and challenges in the statistics program. Could you tell me your philosophy when it comes to teaching students different concepts in statistics?
My goal for the courses I teach is for students to develop a good understanding and a good mastery of the material and being able to use it, and enabling them to do things or understand things or achieve things that they wouldn't do before taking the course. I think the conceptual understanding is very important because that's what allows you to extrapolate. If you just learn to do, or if you just learn to replicate specific technique without appreciating like what it does, it's going to be more. I mean, you can only do it's very limited what you can achieve with that.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of you said for the tests, I don't know if that's why we have a bad reputation in statistics. I feel maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think it's more difficult like CS or, but I think most students do well in my upper level course. I think it's maybe A and B level courses. I think that's where you're adapting to the university courses and how to learn and how to approach different topics. And I think because from high school, it is more of, I'm going to show you something and I expect you to be able to replicate exactly that thing.
Yeah.
In university, it's more like I'm going to show you something, but I expect you to do, once you understand this, I expect you to do like many things related to that. And sometimes, when I test students, I would put, so there is always this, this debate I have with students, the questions we had in the exam, we hadn't seen anything like it in class. And I feel like this question shouldn't even be asked because it's not about, you shouldn't have seen this question. I'm not expecting you to remember the question or replicate the question that you have seen in class. I expect you to, with what you have learned, to be able to tackle similar situations. So hopefully you should be able to solve this question with what you have learned, but you're not expected to have seen that exact question. But that's, I think, a matter of perspective or expectations, and I think there is some adjustment of expectations that's happening around first and second year.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is the case. When I took those courses, the one thing was it was a context that made a big difference. The context for me looking at assignments and solving those questions, and then all of those were, by the way, very separate. Each question had its own context, and then it has its own application of the whatever concept that was. And then on the exam, I remember this was at least A57. There was one context, and all the concepts were tested on that context. I think it was about some a person visiting a market or something like that, and the story was just a needle with which you threaded the questions. And I think that is creative. I really appreciate it, but it takes a bit of time to solve. But I think also making it open book, also putting, I think Professor Mahinda does this. He gives you one sheet in which you can put all your distributions, and you're not expected to memorize
Yeah.
things. You're just expected to apply things.
Oh yeah, I hate memorization. I think for most of my exams there is a cheat sheet,
Yeah.
and for a couple of the upper year courses you even have, it's open book basically.
Yeah.
You can use any resource. And I think actually my philosophy is you should really try to test students as close as possible in a way that's as close as possible to how they're going to use this knowledge in the real life.
Right.
And of course, in the real life, your manager is not going to come and tell you, okay, I have a quiz question for you, like a multiple choice. And, you can look things up. The idea is whether you can solve a problem. And I think the most important or the most valuable skill is translating a real world problem into, formalizing it in a way that it can be addressed by the tools that you have, like how you translate a real world problem into a statistical problem or a mathematical problem or a software problem, and then addressing that. I think once you go out in the real world, you realize that that's probably like the most important skill. Knowing how to, run a specific test in a specific context, that's something that you can look up probably.
Yeah.
I mean, you should, of course, know it, but you should be aware that that exists, and you should know where to look for it.
Yeah.
But you don't have to memorize every little detail about it. That's something that you can, that's why we have books and the internet.
I think this idea is very, very prevalent. Like every domain or every professor here tries to make students ready for the real world. But I think you have some unique experiences that you've had where you actually did that with certain students. Can you give us an example of translating such a real world problem into something statistical and then you solving it using a concept?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have, so in recent years I'm we're offering statistical consulting as a service to the university for free, and I try to engage students, kind of senior undergrad students into the process. I think it's a very valuable experience where we basically, we're going to meet with a client, they're going to tell us their problem, and we'll have to figure out how to help them, achieve what they want. And that's exactly this idea. I have worked with students when in projects, either consulting or project courses where, we try to explore different problems and see how we can address them with techniques and the tools that they have learned through their coursework. I think the universities and our campus actually is very invested in that. There are a lot of initiatives for work integrated learning. We have a co-op program. A lot of the students will go into co-op placements, and hopefully they will also get to work on real world problems. But I try whenever I work closer with a student or a small group of students. The projects I have are not so much research, but more applied research, if you like. I really enjoy that type of work, and I think it's very valuable also for them. It gives them also the confidence to apply what they know and see the value of their education, what they have learned.
To give, let's say, an instance, could you illustrate maybe an impact a student had in something?
So for example, last summer I was contacted by a friend who works who has actually who is running a hedge fund, and they had some statistical problems about how to invest in early stage ventures, basically like seed funding. The dynamics or the specifics of that problem is very different from investing in stocks, because it's very high risk, and the distribution of returns you have is very different. So when he approached me, I thought, instead of me tackling this problem, it would be a very good experience for a student to work on that. So I recruited a student, and I connected them to the client, and I kind of supervised, but very loosely, mostly running ideas for how to approach this problem in practice. And the student did most of the work. I think it was a very rewarding experience. They got hired by the fund, and then I think they're still working today on several projects. And I think it was a very rewarding experience for both sides.
I see the value in that. I think a lot of the times when we learn statistical concepts, they seem to be a bit disconnected from the real world. Most of the times when it comes to industry, the use of statistics, people use it for making things believable and just making sure the stakeholders seem happy in some way. But I think the utility of it is very real. And if used in the right way, it could help in a lot of ways. And I think doing such projects in your fourth year gives you that perspective and how you could actually really use it.
For sure. And for statistics in general, it's, as a subject, it's a very interesting field, because statistics really doesn't have a specific topic per se. It's not like a science. It's not, chemistry is about matter and how it transforms itself. Like physics is about the laws that govern the universe. But statistics is, we are a service discipline. It's a service science. It's almost like a meta science, right? We try to answer questions for other disciplines, and it has been used in different ways. Sometimes, I hear your point that sometimes people know in advance what they want to say. They just want someone to justify it for them. But that's not a good use in statistics. And actually, I think it's part of a statistician's job is to actually raise flags when this happens, and be firm and say, this is what I see and this is exactly what I can say, and not go beyond that. That's part of the kind of like an ethics training for the profession. I think it's very important. But if I think this, you should approach, like for everything, every scientific question, you should approach it in a disinterested way. Like you shouldn't have a stake on whether the answer is A or B. It shouldn't make a difference to you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the only way you can be objective.
Right.
And that's I think that's important.
I think that in that setting, independent contract work is the best thing to do. Never hire a statistician because he'll give you the results. But yeah, I think the ethical part, I don't know which course teaches it, or do professors just like keep talking about it. But my roommates, I have a roommate who did statistics, and the way we changed the way we have conversations, even like thinking about what I say next and how accurate it is, like that foresight came after him learning through all of these courses. And I was like, okay, in some way, this accuracy is going to carry over to the conversations you have when you go into the real workforce. And I think the department or the university should be really grateful for that. I think just the ability for students to project and think about what they think in a way they want to, and in a way that they think is correct, is very, very important. And a lot of people don't have those skills these days.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I think right now we don't have a course that teaches that. If you do consulting, you kind of learn it on the side, but there are codes of conduct, like different statistical societies have codes of conduct for how you should approach things. So if someone is interested, they can find. And I think for most professions, there probably are some associations that have. Now, I think they should be more prominent.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think the last dimension I want to explore before we end is I don't know if you know this, but you have a perspective of being very fit. What have you been doing on a personal Are there any sports that you play? Anything else you do?
Actually, my journey through fitness, I have very diverse interests. I do different things. I try to keep fit, but right now I'm into kickboxing.
Okay.
That's something that I used to do when I was young, and I picked it up again last year. It's very good cardio, kind of high intensity cardio, and it's good for letting steam off in a benign way.
Sure.
People who practice martial arts, I think martial arts have a bad reputation. People think that they are aggressive, but people who do martial arts are the least aggressive people because they take it out in the gym. I think it's other people who are more aggressive. Anyways, I like sailing a lot. I like water sports in general, sailing, cycling, but I'm not. I do a little bit of everything. I'm not like super invested in one thing, and I don't compete. Actually, I like to do it for myself, but I'm not a very competitive person in sports.
Interesting. Why?
Yes. Well, right now, I think it's maybe the risk of injury. I don't want to, I want to do it to the point where I get the benefits. And I don't see, bragging rights is not, like being the best or the best out of a group of people at something is not, I don't know. I think keeping fit is important. For mental health, I think it helps a lot. Relieving stress, it's good to have some physical activity.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and that brings us towards the end of this podcast. The last question I want to ask you is, if someone just seeked to this point of the podcast, what are your 3 takeaways for them from this day?
Okay. One has to be don't give up, don't lose faith, for sure. Now I don't know, maybe it's gonna sound preachy, but make connections with your peers and your cohort and other students in the university. I think that's very important. I feel like after COVID, we have lost that interpersonal connection. I think people are more insular now. So that's the second. And I don't know, for the third, maybe, I don't know, do some physical activity since we discussed that last. I think that's also important. Keeping fit, keeping active, and actually also maintaining a balanced life throughout your studies. I know it's a time where you have to follow your interests, and sometimes you get into things very intensely, but it's important also to keep, make sure you have a social life, you go out, you experience the city, you do different things. Try to maybe pick a day or half a day where you devote on doing things that are different than your academic pursuits. I think that's also important, keeping the balance.
For anyone who is in Toronto, these are, I think, the last few days of summer. It's very important for us to get out.
Oh yeah, especially in Toronto. You have to make the most of the good weather whenever you find it.
Exactly. Okay, thank you everyone for tuning in, especially the listeners. I think this is our second attempt at this podcast, and I hope you're enjoying the way the professors are delivering content, the things we learn from their lives. Not even learning, then just listening about how they came to be the person who stands in front of your classroom and instructs you to do things and gives you grades and examinations that you judge yourself in. But your support is what is pushing us to do this further. To show your support, you can check out all the socials that the CMS department has. We have an Instagram where we keep talking about the community and how it has been progressing, the different events happening, the alumni, the students, all their stories. And also we have a LinkedIn where we keep posting about the different feats our students and professors keep achieving. Very recently, one of our professors and a student have got an opportunity to publish a paper and go to Milan to present this paper. Soon you'll be seeing their story on Instagram if you haven't already. Thank you so much, Professor Sotos, for your time today. And
Thank you, Adi. Yeah, this was great.
I hope
Thank you
we
for
have-
doing this.
Yes, we have more
very important.
conversations like this in the future. Thank you so much.